Professor Karaganov, welcome to CCTV News World Insight.
My great pleasure.
Some were suggesting that it seems that Russia can develop a good relationship or sound relationship with any country but the United States. What would you say?
Well, at this juncture, we hope to have a very friendly relationship with the United States eventually, when the United States overcome its present difficulties, where the United States is now is deeply internally divided. It is in a revanchist mood after winning 15 years ago, and then losing 10 years ago almost everything and more that it had won. And also it is living through a period of adaptation to post-hegemonic order. I mean, it seemed 15, 20 years ago that there is one world and it is run by the United States. It was unhistorical, anti-historical, and it failed. But it failed even more bitter than when previously was thought, because of relatively unwise, very unwise, and incursions into Afghanistan, Iraq, which were lost. So basically, we will wait until the United States will adapt to the new world, and of course we shall try to build a working relationship with them. I think that the policy of the United States or China, and that is a policy of neo-containment, is unwise.
You talk about your wait. Russia will wait for the United States to find its own way, and yet Washington has been accusing Moscow of interfering in this round of presidential election by taking away information that are, as they say, extremely important for the political candidates.
It reflects the depth of the crisis in the United States. Politically, it is an isolationist country. It never takes into consideration other countries, especially in the internal debate, when Russia is one of the major issues on the agenda of the election campaign. That shows the depth of the crisis. Of course, Russia says that it has nothing to do with it is not interfering. But when we hear the accusations, we just say, do you remember the tries to organize color revolutions all over the world? I mean, in Georgia, Ukraine.
How is that compared to the presidential election?
I mean, you interfered, and now you're lamenting that alleges somebody is interfering. So that means that if you live in Crystal Palace, don't throw stones. There are others who could throw stones much better.
So Russia did or did not get the information?
Of course it did not. At least officially we said there is no, that the government has not been involved at all. There are Russians, private by the way, Russians, hackers, who claim that they have done it. And they are even acknowledged. Might be we have very brilliant, IT people, so might be somebody did it, but the government is not directly involved, or it says it is not involved.
What about the issue of Syria with the United States? What do you think will be Russia's role?
We are there to kill as many terrorists as possible and to steer the unraveling Middle East to the extent possible. It will be unraveling anyway for internal reasons. As the Russian-US compromises, I mean, originally United States rejected any common work with Russia. Then they agreed, and the next day after they agreed, American forces bombed a regiment of Syrian troops, injuring 150. It was a very well premeditated attack. So the question now was, I mean, in Russian eyes, whether either the political leadership does not control the military, which is bad, very bad, or else, I mean, the political leadership is lying to us. So Russia, in a way, has decided then to go for a bust supporting the Syrian government, which is a legitimate, by the way, government, unlike American actions which are illegitimate from the point of view of international law.
But Russia has also been accused by the United States, not surprisingly, that Russia has been doing some of the harms to the local people over there. For example, even killing some of the UN workers or related people. that has been an accusation. Russia responded.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, there was a terrible war, and people die in a terrible civil war. We want to finish it by restoring the legitimate government. We have had, I mean, many cases of other forces bombing, I mean, civilian objects. I mean, 3 days ago, I mean, Saudis killed 400 people in a peaceful procession. Americans bombed hospitals, but I don't want to trade accusations. We are supporting the legitimate government, hoping, in the hope that to end this terrible conflict.
But when you are saying that Russia is supporting the legitimate government, that's exactly the clashing point, isn't it? That the West, particularly the United States, does not want to support the Assad regime. So is there any room for negotiation about the outside
we are on the part of
powers?
law, and they are on law and order there, on the side of disorder and criminality. So, I mean, it's a different position. I think that morally we are right. But we are all participating in the civil war. So, I mean, people die there.
Differences between Russia and the West may not necessarily result in Moscow stepping back from the region, but always mean a step closer to the East. The Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union is an example of this, and now Moscow is eyeing an even bigger project, the Greater Eurasia. This larger entity could also include China, India, Pakistan, Iran, and former Soviet states, with the aim of developing trade and lower tariff barriers. But Russia denies an anti-West emphasis, citing invitations to the European nations to participate. That plan of connecting Europe and Asia together is echoed by the China-led Belt and Road Initiative. First announced by Chinese President Xi Jinping during a 2013 visit to Kazakhstan, the initiative aims to improve cooperation with countries across vast parts of Asia, Europe and Africa. Many see great potential for the two visions to link together rather than compete with each other, bringing favourable outcomes to the countries involved.
You are one of those instrumental figures in bringing out the idea of Eurasia. Help us to understand how they started.
The idea of Greater Eurasia, I mean, Eurasia has been here with us, I mean, for many millenniums of years. I mean, a Greater Eurasia is a concept geared at creation on the Eurasian space, on the space of our whole continent, a zone of economic openness and liberal economic order, a zone of respect towards sovereignty and towards freedom of choice of people, a zone of connectivity in terms of infrastructure, and eventually it should involve countries from maybe Japan or Korea and down from China, Russia, and towards Europe,
well,
and down towards India. And because the world is getting deglobalized, fractioning, I think we have to start an opposite positive tendency, at least on the space of Eurasia.
Talking about the common space, there are people suggesting redundancies, as they say, between the idea of Greater Eurasia and also Belt and Road initiatives from China. What would you say?
The One Belt, One Road initiative and its pairing with the Eurasian Economic Union is within this bigger concept. It does not involve, it involves mostly, One Belt, One Road involves mostly countries of Central Eurasia, which is a building step, but we have to involve, I mean, countries also like India, Korea, and eventually Europe into this road. So it is a big idea, and also One Belt, One Road is mostly economic idea. I mean, it's spreading wealth and economic stability, but Greater Eurasia is also economic, political idea. It's an idea to build a new foundation of the world order while the old is disintegrating.
What would you make of the difficulties implementing these ideas?
There are no contradictions which are really deep. And if we have a common goal, I mean, it will be easier. to look over these contradictions from a height. In Europe, we failed to build a big Europe as it was dreamed of 25, 30 years ago, partly for stupidity of some of their partners, partly for greed, but partially also because we didn't have a good common aim. And we didn't have, real drivers. Russia was not enough. Now, with China and Russia joining hands, we could, and eventually bringing in other countries, I think we could succeed to the extent possible.
What are some of the earlier indicators or early harvest that you've already seen about these two ideas, Greater Eurasia, Belt and Road Initiative, that would give you the confidence to say what you just said?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Russia has turned east. Mentally, Russian elite, which was, European, and was looking at Asia only 2 years ago as a burden or as a threat. Russia has turned east. And China is turning west more and more. Not turning west, political, but turning west. Now we see that there is, in Russian terms, there is a start of real growth in Russian Far East and Siberia. Even population for the first time in 40, 50 years, natural growth has started there. That's Russia, but it's a different world. We are building. It's win-win. We are bettering our relations, not like in old times against somebody, but for the common space. It has already provided for a new view, at least on this area.
Talking about China and Russia, the two countries have experienced quite some ups and downs over the past few decades, let's just put it that way. Is there enough strategic trust between the two?
I think there is. It's truly unprecedented, this kind of relationship between great powers, and there is strategic trust on the level of most of the elites, and as far as I understand, most of the peoples, trust each other. However, there are weaknesses in our relationship, and one of these weaknesses is that we are not ready to draft together a common future. One of the ways to do that exactly is to build a greater Eurasia together with other countries, but being in the lead.
But the countries, when they develop, will they become competitors?
Well, they could become competitors, and should become, because competition drives progress, but they should not become rivals. Naturally, you have your own strength, we have our own strength, so we could combine them, and that would strengthen us both. China is much more economically potent, we are much more strategically potent, and we will be, because of our history and because of our character, we will be strategically much more potent for quite a while.
The two leadership coming from two sides have been meeting very frequently, Professor, and meanwhile, external circumstances, in a way, has led the two countries together, further together. But question is how sustainable that will be.
Well, that depends on us.
Us meaning?
Of course, us meaning Russians and Chinese. Of course, outside pressure on Russia from the West and on China from the United States is bringing us together. But we have discovered that there is very little which divides us, and actually why we should not be brought together even without outside pressure. But outside pressure helped.
Anti-missile defense system, for example, joint military exercises, for example. How will these sporadic issues, in a way, influence the direction of our relations?
The security relationships are already very robust. I would say we are not aiming at a military alliance, and I hope they will not be aiming, but de facto the level of military to military cooperation, including multiple exercises, is on the level higher than many military alliances. And our military really work together, strengthening each other and international peace.
Professor, it's such a pleasure to have you. All the best
It's my great pleasure to
Thank
be
you,
here.
Professor.